This has definitely been a pretty wild start to the regular season for the New York Rangers, as of course, they have pretty much been the best team in away games and the absolute worst team in home games. And then you kind of flip that around and take a look at, the major struggles offensively this team has had compared to the, incredible defensive play for the most part. I think it does go to show that, this Rangers team has really kind of changed its ways from past years. And I think if you really take a look at the way this roster is built right now and compare it to the previous, two teams that the Rangers had when they went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years ago, I honestly think the way this roster is built right now with the players on it currently and with this coaching staff, I think this team is in a better spot to actually potentially end up winning a cup. Now, I'm not saying that to, say that this team is going to go out there and make the playoffs this year and go on some crazy run and win the cup. But what I am saying is I think this roster has a better chance to do so than those previous years. And I understand this team, made multiple Eastern Conference Finals appearances, but I think that was in large part due to, of course, Igor Shesterkin playing some pretty incredible hockey. So with him still being on this roster, of course, and I still have faith in him being that elite guy come playoff time. So I think with how this roster has changed so much, with the defense additions we've seen, with the forward additions, with adding in a coach like Mike Sullivan, I really do think this team is built in a much better way. And first off, I think a clear example of that is the defense core and how that has changed, for example, quite a bit since the beginning of last regular season, where now we have guys like Vladislav Gavrikov, Will Borgen, Carson Soucy, who's been much better this season. You've got some solid kind of more depth guys in Urho Vakanainen, Matthew Robertson, who stepped in there and played a pretty big role. You've got a guy like Scott Morrow, down there in the AHL. He can be called up and be, that kind of number 4 right-handed defenseman. So I think the overall depth is pretty solid right now. It's definitely looking really good. And of course, as good, or if not maybe better even, than those previous teams as well, depth-wise on the back end. And then and you take a look at the talent-wise, the kind of higher-end players, guys like Gavrikov, Borgen, and Soucy, those 3 players are playing, top 4 roles for this team. So you kind of compare that to what this team has previously had in the top 4 for moments, and that is Jacob Trouba, Keandre Miller, and Ryan Lindgren. And that's not to say that Trouba and Keandre, for example, aren't having some great seasons right now with the Ducks and Canes respectively, but if we're being honest, and you watch those kind of playoff runs there with this Rangers teams from a couple years ago, with Jacob Trouba on it, for example, in that series against the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals, he was an actual liability for this team. When he was out there, I was like, uh-oh, they might, cough up the puck there, give up a massive kind of turnover, and it very well could directly result in a goal, which happened a couple times. So I think going from guys like, Trouba and Keandre, who were actual liabilities defensively for this team at moments, and they had their good moments, but they definitely had their bad moments, and obviously they have been a whole lot better on their new team. So that is that, obviously, and I don't think it's to say that, if we kept Trouba, he'd do as good as he's done, of course, this season with the Ducks, so I don't really think that was necessarily like a bad trade in hindsight. I think that's still a trade you make. So for me, with what we saw from guys like Trouba, Keandre, and Lindgren in those playoff runs there, and you kind of flip that around to guys like Gavrikov, Borgen, and Soucy, from what we've seen this season, I think that is light years better now than what we had previously. Gavrikov has turned into a true, amazing, top pairing caliber shutdown defenseman. He had some great years with LA. He signed for the Rangers, and I figured he could be a phenomenal partner for Foxy, and he has exceeded my expectations. He has been an absolutely incredible defensive defenseman to begin this season, and he has really, I think, helped Adam Fox get kind of back on track to being that, Norris caliber defenseman. He may not go out there and, win the whole thing this year and actually win the Norris Trophy. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but the point is, Adam Fox is having a much better season than the past one, and I think a result of that is the fact that Vladislav Gavrikov is his new partner instead of guys like, Keandre Miller and Ryan Lindgren, who, at moments were good alongside Foxy, but I think it's pretty clear Gavrikov is a perfect fit for someone like Foxy. He is that true shutdown defensive defenseman. Here and there, he's going to create some offense. I mean, in the game against the Predators, he had a goal and an assist. He can create some offense here and there, but he's just going to be that great, reliable defensive defenseman. He's a big, sturdy, tough veteran guy. And then you got him alongside that dynamic offensive and defensive guy. So Foxy, I think, probably feels a little more comfortable, going forward at moments with a guy like Gavrikov back there instead of someone like Lindgren, who, was good, of course, but I just think it's pretty obvious Gavrikov is way better than Lindgren defensively and just overall. So I think that's where, first off, the defense core and how it's changed a lot and has really become the team's strength, where you take a look at kind of past years. For example, this team, especially last season, the reason why they did not make playoffs, I fully believe, was mainly, the main reason, of course, was the bad defensive play. There were many reasons, of course, but the biggest one, I think, was the bad defensive play. This year, we've seen that completely flipped around, where defensively, they have been absolutely shut down, and offensively, they've had some pretty big struggles at moments, especially at home. Now, of course, things may be slowly starting to turn around here, especially with, Gabe Perreault and Trocheck into the top 6 now, of course. But I just think it goes to show this Rangers team defensively is really, really good. They have some real shutdown guys, and someone like Will Borgen, I think, has been absolutely incredible this season. I always kind of thought, really and truly, after I saw a few games of him, that he could probably be a pretty solid or decent second pairing defenseman, but so far this season, he has really exceeded my expectations and has been truly one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL to begin this season, at least statistically, as Hockey Stat Cards did come out with their, stat cards, of course, like they do with their defensive rating and net rating, all that kind of stuff, and they showed theirs a couple days ago after the Nashville Predators game, I believe it was, and this is the kind of top defensive ratings in the entire NHL. You've got at the number 1 spot, Will Borgen with a plus 4.2, the best in the entire NHL. Second place got Shea Theodore, the Golden Knights, 3.9. Braden McNabb of the Golden Knights once again, 3.8. Then you've got Vladislav Gavrikov at a 3.8 as well, tied for third place. And then you've got in 6th spot, you got Adam Fox at 3.3. So that is just the defensive rating. And then you got the overall net rating. So offensively and defensively, you got Adam Fox there at 5.5, which is third best in the entire league. So the Rangers have 3 of the kind of best defensive defensemen, really, you could say, to begin this season from Hockey Stat Cards and their kind of statistics there. And then offensively and overall, just all around, you got Fox at the number 3 spot. So I think it definitely goes to show that this team has taken some pretty major steps up defensively. They've gotten a whole lot better. That has definitely become a pretty massive strength of this team. And, I think a guy like Foxy, like I said, having a guy like Gavrikov come in there has really given him the opportunity to, kind of revert back towards that Norris caliber, play style or play level or whatever you want to call it, because he has really taken some big steps up, I think, from what we saw last season there, where he still was, solid. It wasn't necessarily bad, but for his standards, definitely was nowhere near that guy that we know he can definitely be. So I think to see him kind of be as good as he's been so far this season has really been nice. I think the defense core is going to play a pretty massive role in this team going forward, and I think this is an area that, honestly, you don't have to go out there now after seeing what they've done so far and make a big addition. I don't think that's necessarily a big need now. Obviously, if you're able to go out there and make an upgrade over Soucy, I guess, and add in a really great, top 4 caliber left-handed defenseman, that could make sense, I guess. But really and truly, come deadline time, if this team is, in the mix there for the playoffs or in a playoff spot, which I expect them to be, I do think they should go out there and look to add in a top 6 caliber forward. I think that's where this team could look to kind of add a little more, of course. I think they've got a pretty good coaching staff there, a multi-time Stanley Cup winning coach, although Mike Sullivan, of course, did have guys like Crosby, Malkin, Letang on his team, but he's still got some good players here, of course, not quite at that level, but I think he's a good coach there. You could definitely say is better than guys like Peter Laviolette and Gerard Gallant, and then you also, I just think, have a kind of really solid built roster right now. I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I do think it's a pretty decent built roster for the playoffs, especially with the way this D-core is kind of built right now, with the goaltender we have, with the coaching staff we have, and then you also got to factor in that Since the last time this Rangers team was in playoffs, they didn't have a guy like a JT Miller. And obviously, he hasn't been, quite as advertised, I guess, or quite as good as we saw at moments last season so far in this one. But I do still have some faith in him. He's the captain. He's got that kind of playoff play style that you definitely kind of want to have on your team and hate to play against come playoff time. So I think that can be, a big difference maker from previous Rangers playoff teams we've had. And then you also got to factor in a guy like Sam Carrick. I think he is a literal perfect fourth line center. I don't know what you can really ask for more out of a fourth line center. He brings offense here and there. He brings some good defensive play, can kill penalties, a good face-off taker, gritty, tough guy, can fight, can hit, can battle, can scrap. Like, he does literally everything you want out of a fourth line center. He's making $1 million. I mean, he is a perfect guy to have. So I think with certain players this team has added on both ends there, the forward and defensive side of things, got the new coaching staff. I think this team is much better built for playoffs. And at the deadline, honestly, unless there is some really great option out there that's a good price, good value, a top 4 caliber left-handed defenseman, maybe you want to upgrade over Soucy, I guess. But honestly, I think with the way this decor is playing right now, unless something big changes, I think that's not too big of a worry. I think you should be kind of more so looking at adding in a possible kind of top 6 caliber forward to the mix to really kind of bolster this forward core and help the offense. But other than that, I think this team isn't perfect. I'm not saying they're perfect and they shouldn't look to make moves and get better. But of course, I think going out there and adding in a top 6 caliber forward at this point is much more of a need than adding in another kind of top 4 caliber defenseman, as Soucy has been a whole lot better this season. Robertson's been good at moments, so I think it's not as big of a need than adding in a probable kind of top 6 caliber forward at the deadline or at some point leading up to it. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Do you agree with me on thinking that this team is built better for the playoffs than in previous seasons? Do you think they're built in a worse way? Do you think this kind of decor is that much better? Do you think it just kind of been a bit of a fluke? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.